computer. Okay, good. Here's some other people coming in. So I'm recording. I'm recording, but people are continuing to join. Make sure you guys mute yourselves on the way in. I chose that option, mute everybody on the way in, but it doesn't always necessarily do that. Okay, who's napping during this? I want to be napping. I sit here and I'm freezing at home. So, and I also put my workout clothes on at the beginning of the day, and I think I'm going to go work out. And then like by 6 o'clock at night, I'm going, I haven't worked out yet. So I do it like around 7 or 8 at night. So I have my workout clothes on. Okay. So today we're talking about, I have my corporation or LLC. Now, what the heck do I do with it? And this is really important information. I'm so glad a lot of people are coming in because I wasn't sure how everybody would respond to this. So all of you all are MSOs, have MSOs, and you're going to have some kind of an entity. And I'm not sure if we're all in California or if we're in other states. I mostly deal with California, but a lot of what I say, the majority of what I say is going to pertain to every state. So I'll just yak away and hopefully you'll get some good information here. I don't have a PowerPoint today because it's mostly, there's not really much I'm going to show you some documents and things and some how to go online and do some things. So if you, for instance, didn't go to an attorney to get your corporation or LLC set up, you might not have all of the follow-up things that you're supposed to do done. And that's what I want to help you all with. So in California, you get your articles of incorporation filed. That's in any state. It's called certificate of incorporation in some states, or articles of organization if it's an LLC, or certificate of organization if it's an LLC. So you have this document. It's a certificate that says, okay, now you exist. And I like to compare this to the birth certificate, right? Because which president was it who said corporations are people too? A corporation actually has a legal, I think it was one of the Bushes, I can't remember, but a corporation has a legal existence once that document is filed. So now it has an existence. The next thing, the very next thing that has to happen, and if you went through LegalZoom or one of these like online DIY type of services, this might not get done. And that next thing is to get an EIN, an employer identification number. That is really easy to do online. I'm going to show you where to go to do that. So I'm going to start, okay, my computer's really messy right now. When I'm working, I have so many different windows open because I'm doing multiple things at once. But I'm going to do a screen share and show you where the website is. Let's see, where is it here? Okay, let's try Google Chrome. Share. Okay, here's Google Chrome. Now, we're going to go to irs.gov. And then all you do, and you're going to see when I go in this search bar here, what's the very first thing that comes up? New EIN. And you go to new EIN, and that's where you start. And then you go through, it's going to, apply for an EIN online. Then it goes through all this stuff about, do you really need one? Let me see if I can, there we go. So, but all you have to do is go to apply online now. And then it's going to take you through a bunch of questions. Yes, okay, I'm going to tell the truth. We begin the application. Let me see, is somebody else coming in? Admit, yes, somebody is in the waiting room. Let me admit them. So then we just begin the application, and then you go down the list. What are we? So for you all, you're either going to be a corporation or a limited liability company. Let's just pick corporation, and then we'll go next. And then it says, are you going to be an S corporation? Now, this is whether you're an S corporation or not is a decision that you all are going to make with your CPA. I will tell you as a general rule, in most cases, you will be an S corporation. And you I can't give you that advice. It's a tax and liability analysis. Even whether there were a corporation or an LLC is an analysis that you want to do with, legal counsel and or CPA in your jurisdiction. For the most part, however, either way, you're going to end up as an S corporation. And then you just go on through the process and just fill stuff out and make sure. So we're going to just click all these. What did we do? We started a new business. We're going to click these boxes. Now you're going to put your name and social security number. Who are you? You're the president or CEO. And you just keep going. It's not going to let me continue because I didn't fill all that in, because I'm not going to put anybody's social security number in there. But at the very end, it will give you your, it'll say, have it mailed to you or receive online. Say receive online, because then it's going to take you to a screen where you can just click a PDF and you'll have it right in front of you. But this is really important because this happened to me. Remember a couple of years ago when the government shut down, the federal government shut down for like 2 months or something, and the IRS completely shut down. So I kid you not, ready to click receive online, and the government shut down at that minute. And I did not get this client's EIN, and there was no way we could go in and get it because you have to have the EIN to go into the record. But my point is that before you click that, it's going to give you your EIN right there. And I always write it down. And then I click the PDF and get it. And that, because if anything goes wrong with the system, then it will take you weeks or months to get your EIN, and you have to get your EIN to open a bank account. Okay, so that's the next thing you do. Then the next thing, there are filings on the Secretary of State website. So on the Secretary of State website, let me start over from scratch. So on the Secretary of State website, there's a statement of information, or in other states, it might be called an annual report. So we're going to go to sos.ca.gov, and it takes us to our beautiful Secretary of State website. What are we doing? We're going to do something with business. So we go to business. And here, LLC statement of information online or corporate statement of information online. And you're going to go through and fill that out and file that. So let's see what it looks like. I probably can't get through the whole thing because I'm not going to fill it out. So first you're going to find the entity. So let's look up Scheffler Law. And we're going to click that. So here's Scheffler Law. And I click on the entity. And it comes up. And I'm going to click this box and file statement of information. You all will have this recording. So if I'm moving fast, Now, if you have an attorney, the attorney will do it for you. I do it for all my clients, okay? But it's really important because if you don't do this, you'll get a penalty, and it can be like $500 if you wait long enough. So then it's going to give, so this is the entity information. This is all correct. Yes. And now I'm going to start filling stuff in. I'm going to fill in my address, country, my address. Drop-down box for California. Zip code. And then this is what I want to show you. So once that's in there, it says, is the mailing address the same? Yes. Is the principal office the same? Yes. So you click yes to all those. And then when you go to the next frame, you're going to start filling in who the officers and directors are. If you're a solely owned entity, your name is going to go in every single one of these boxes. If there are more than one of you, then you're going to fill these different boxes with your different names. And if you want advice on who should do what, you have to talk to your own lawyer or CPA. But here I'm going to put my name in, right? And And then I put that address. So we do the click down box, principal office, and that's going to fill in the address to every one of those. So that way you don't have to type that address in every single time. Now, in the old days, we had to fill these out in a form and submit it. And it was, challenging. The filing fee for this is $25 if you're a corporation and $20 if you're an LLC. When you get to the end, you put a card in, file it, bing, bang, boom, and it's up there. And what it looks like when you, yes, leave site. Okay, so we'll go back to my entity. We'll open my entity here. And we're going to see, let me see. Oh, it doesn't show that way. Let me start over. I'm going to show you how it looks. Oops, wrong business. Now, if I'm going to go to business search, this is how you can look up your entity. So we'll do corporation, and we have the fabulous Scheffler Law, which prompts right away. And then here's Scheffler Law. If I click on Scheffler Law, I'm going to see my original articles that were filed in 2000, and then all the statements of information. Why? Oh, this was my restated so this is when I changed my name. My restated registration was when I changed my name. And then the statements of information are going to show here. And that's how you can tell when was the last time you filed one. And we can also look up information about entities. And another reason I'm showing this to you is because all this is a matter of public record. Anybody can look it up. So make sure you see, this is all my office address here, right? We don't ever want to put our home address on this. I mean, you can, but there's been verified in all these search apps that you can find out information about people. I just like to not have my personal address on there. And in the old days, like 3 years ago, we used to be able to get like a mailboxes, et cetera, address that would say suite number on it or whatever. It didn't say PO box, and we could use those. But now the government agencies and the banks have gotten wise to that, and they will not open a bank account for you if that address is not an actual physical address. So if you have a mobile practice, which I don't think anybody on here does have a mobile practice, but if you have a mobile practice, you need to find a business address in that jurisdiction that you can use. There are virtual offices that you can get, like even at my office building, you can get a virtual office, which is like $125 or $150 a month, and you get an actual physical address with a suite number or just like a general mailbox, and they'll take your mail. You can even have receptionist service, conference rooms. There's different options for different prices. So if you have trouble, if you don't have a physical address practice, that's just a way around that, because the next thing you're going to do is go open the bank account. The three things that you typically need to open a bank account are the articles, the registration, right? Articles of incorporation or articles of organization or certificate of registration, whatever it is in your state. If you're not in California, you're going to need the first statement of information. And that's what we just did. That takes, in California, that takes about 3 days, and you'll get an email and it'll email it to you. And there's your statement of information. And now you make a copy of that and you're going to take it to the bank with you. Then it'll also show up in here. So we're going to take those three things to the bank. Now, what I advise people to do, especially now with COVID and people aren't working a lot, because you're going to need a business banker at your bank to get that bank account open. I hope everybody here already has their bank account open for their MSO, because I'm talking about your MSO. We've taken care of it on the practice side, right? But for your MSO, you need this because you don't want that money funneling into your personal account. I tell everybody to call their bank, make an appointment with the business banker, and get that person's email address. And then you're going to email them a copy of your registration document, your statement of info, and any amendments you've made. So like this one's my restated one where I changed the name from the Law Office of Deborah C. Scheffler to Scheffler Law. So there's always a record of this, of any changes we make to these entities. So if you've changed the name, you have to take them that too. And the statement of information and the EIN letter. I just showed you how to get the EIN letter and how to get the statement of information. These three things you're going to send to the bank and make sure that's all they need, because banks are squirrely and they sometimes have different rules, because the people working in the bank are going to have to send that all to their legal department and have it approved. Many times I've seen clients go to the bank and they say, oh, we're going to send this to legal, and once they approve it, we can open your account. What does that mean? You have to hot trot yourself down there for a second visit. And we are busy and don't have time for that. So that's why I tell you to email this stuff to them first. And this is true even if you're changing banks, right? Get it to them and make sure that they approve it. And then you have your appointment, you go in and it's done. Now you're set up you have an entity set up and you have your bank account open. Yay, you're legal. So the articles are like the birth certificate. The EIN is like the social security number for the entity. That's the entity through which the IRS, those tax guys, track your entity. Now, there's another thing we have to do with the IRS. Let me go back to their home page here. Let me do it this way. It's probably faster. So this is, again, we talked about S corporation. Every corporation is born a C corporation until you proactively take an S election. Every LLC, well, when you get your EIN for the LLC, it's going to ask you, is there only one owner? And they're going to ask you, do you want to be disregarded for tax purposes? This is something you have to talk to your CPA about. It's a whole analysis you have to go through. For the most part, if there's only one owner, you can be disregarded for tax purposes for the time being, but it might behoove you to take that S election. The S election, that's the second thing on my dropdown that I do all the time, is filing a 2553. I do not recommend you do this yourself. I recommend that you either have a CPA or an attorney help you with it. This form is the form that has to be filed for you to be treated as an S corporation. Whether you're an LLC or a C Corp, you can have this S treatment. So what is an S corporation treatment? S corporation treatment, okay, let me not get too technical here because I'll get all legal nerd on you and talk about the whole history of America from the very beginning. This allows you, so let me just say it simply like this. A C corporation is taxed at the corporate level and the shareholder level. So the profit you make in that entity will be taxed, corporate tax. And then when you distribute that money to yourself as an owner, you'll be taxed again on it. Taking that S election makes that C corporation a flow through entity. So there's no tax at the corporate level, but you're only taxed when that money gets into your personal pocket. And we're going to talk about that in a minute because that's really important too. An LLC is essentially born a partnership with liability protection. So why do we set these entities up anyway? There's two reasons we set these entities up: for tax protections and liability protection. You might have heard of the corporate veil. The corporate veil, I should get a veil, is the veil of protection. You know how I like to have props to demonstrate. It's the veil of protection you get for any liabilities that occur arising out of your business, that something that might not be covered by insurance, because hopefully everyone has good insurance. My last video, I talked about insurance. Protects your personal assets, your house, your car, your bank account, your whatever, your collection of Rolex watches or your horse farm or whatever it is that you all own is not accessible to any judgment creditor for a liability that arises out of your business, whether it's breach of contract or somebody trips and falls in your place, right? These things are only the assets of the business are accessible to those liabilities if you have a corporation or an LLC and you're running it properly. So piercing the corporate veil and getting to your personal assets for corporate liability can occur if you don't do all this stuff that I'm telling you to do. If you don't adhere, it's called adhering to corporate formalities. Or there's also a theory of alter ego liability. So if you have an entity set up, but you put everything, your lease, your fictitious business name, and your bank account in your personal name, and you don't set it up under your entity like I'm telling you, that's alter ego liability. You're acting like a individual sole proprietor, and you're acting like you don't have a corporation. So now the corporate veil can be pierced. If you fail to keep that statement of information filed, if you fail to keep corporate minutes properly, that corporate veil can be pierced and your personal assets can be accessed. So that's one reason we have that entity, to give us that liability protection so we can separate our business debts from our personal debts. Now, if you personally guarantee something like your lease, you're personally on the hook anyway. But the other thing it does is it gives you this great tax advantage. So a sole proprietor or a general partnership is like two or more people functioning without an entity, and they're like a group of sole proprietors, but it's like one. All the revenue from their business that they receive, they're going to be subject to income tax and self-employment tax. Self-employment tax is about 15.3%. So, these MSOs can be very, very lucrative. And I have clients that have been in business for 20 years, and we've recently valued their businesses, and, it can be very successful if you hang in there and do things right and do your marketing. Oh, we're going to do a marketing webinar also coming up soon, because I think that it's something that's really important for people to know how to do. I see a lot of people open and then they just think if I build it, they will come, and nobody shows up. So we'll talk about that too another time. But, and all this revenue that comes into the practice through your management services agreement, through your sublease, through your licensing agreement is going to flow to your MSO. That's the deal. We know that besides the bills of the practice, that revenue is going to flow to you all. So what do you do with it? Now you've got it. How do you have the best tax advantage to that revenue? That's why we have the S election, because, okay, so let me just digress for one moment. So as I was saying, the partnership with the partnership or the sole proprietor, everything's taxed, income tax or employment tax, right? So the LLC, unless you take the S election, is going to be taxed as a partnership or sole proprietor. You don't automatically get those tax protections there. The S corporation gives you the opportunity to have them, but there's something you have to do. It's a way that you have to pay yourself. So there's two buckets that your revenue is going to go into when you pay yourselves out of the money that you receive into your MSO from the practice. One is your reasonable salary. The other is your shareholder or owner member distribution amount, right? The reasonable salary should be run through payroll. So you should have a payroll account for your MSO, and you are going to write yourselves, you're going to issue a check. Now there's Gusto is great. There's QuickBooks does it. There's a CPA, Bill McKee, that I refer a lot of people to, who understands med spas, and they do the income tax, the bookkeeping, and the payroll. I personally use Business Online Payroll. It's just businessonlinepayroll.com. And the reason I do that is because I've been using them for years. And, I started my own practice right out of school. And you know how it is when you start a new business, revenue fluctuates, right? You don't know how much your payroll is going to be every month. Sometimes it's not very much or nothing, right? And then eventually we start generating more revenue, building it up, and we can start paying ourselves. So with Business Online Payroll, the reason I like it is because I can change it every month according to what I want to pay myself. Now I'm to a point now where it's stable and I just do the same amount every month. But that's why I like it. There's a fee for these services. It's around $50 a month, depending on how many employees you have for the MSO. all your RNs and all those people are going to be employees of the practice, right? Of National Medical Directors, Inc. So don't worry about them. This is just for you. And if there's more than one of you involved in the MSO, then the two of you. So you're going to pay yourself a reasonable salary. And then the rest of it, you're going to distribute to yourself as shareholder distribution. Now we said out of the reasonable salary, you're going to pay income tax, and the regular employment taxes are going to be taken out of that check because your payroll service is going to do that. And then the owner distribution portion is just a check you write to yourself or a transfer you make into your personal account from the MSO bank account. So how do we determine how much this is? And what does this reasonable salary mean? Well, we have to, our objective is to give ourselves as much as we can at the lower tax rate without the IRS getting suspicious. If what I tell my clients and what I do for myself is I just keep the salary a little more than the shareholder distribution. And I do like a 40, 60, 60 on the salary side, 40 on the distribution side. And as long as you're keeping it, that your W-2 is a little higher than this money over here, and you're going to 1099 yourself for that too. The IRS, it's less likely that the IRS is going to come knocking and say, hey, what's going on here? Because, they want to get paid. So now you know how to set that entity up, what documents you need to open a bank account, how to get them, who to talk to about how to fill them out, and how to pay yourself. And get your tax person involved in this, how much to pay yourself as well, because whoever's doing, when I'm working with a client, I always connect with their CPA, and CPA is really important here because these are business entities and they're complex because of our MSO-PC relationship. And we really need someone who's highly skilled. This is not like going to H&R Block. These people are expensive, but it's professional service. We're all licensed professionals here or dealing with licensed professionals. And we know we wouldn't go to 7-Eleven to get our neurotoxin, right? We go to a professional for that. So that's how you figure out how to pay yourself and get the best advantage out of it. And that's why we have these entities, and that's what an S-election is all about. Now, let's talk about a couple of other documents. If it's a corporation, you have to do corporate minutes. So why would you even have a corporation if you have to do this extra document? The startup is less expensive if you do the corporation. And from my perspective, it's a little more formal. So there's less of a piercing issue. You have more things to prove that you had an actual entity there. And that in the event that anyone ever tried to do any piercing. So you need minutes and bylaws. If you do this through LegalZoom or one of these services, they'll send you a book, right? They'll send you a book. I've got a bunch of them back here, a beautiful binder like this, and you open it up and there's a bunch of stuff in here. Most people I know, I've never seen anyone who did this through one of those services that even opened their book and did anything with it. In this book, you're going to find, these aren't required anymore, but a corporate seal, and you'll have a tab for your articles of incorporation, your bylaws, your minutes. If you order them from one of those online services, they'll be in there and you need to sign them. Most people don't sign them. You need to sign them and fill them out. There's an employee benefits plan. If you have one of those, notices, permits, and application. This is where you put your statement of information. If you have a printed copy and your EIN letter, your stock ledger. This is where you list who gets stock, when it was issued to them, and how much. And we have also stock certificates, which have to be filled out if you're issuing stock. So if there's, especially if there's more than one of you, it's really important that this is done. If you have an LLC, you need what's called an operating agreement. And again, if you do this through one of those services, a lot of times they'll send you a blank operating agreement. If there's more than one of you, the operating agreement is really important. And if there's more than one of you in a corporation, there's another document called a buy-sell agreement that's really important, because think about this. Here's 2 or 3 of you owning this entity, and you're building it up and you're building value, and everybody's happy, and we're making money, and we're making people beautiful and making people healthy. And then one of you wins the lottery and wants to retire in Fiji, or one of you becomes disabled, or one of you gets divorced, or one of you dies. And I've seen every single one of these things happen in businesses. That buy-sell agreement or operating agreement is going to say what happens in the event of any of those incidents. Let's talk about divorce for a minute, because it's less morbid than disability or death. California is a community property state. I don't know about family law for any other states. I barely know about family law about California. I don't do that. It's been a long time since I even touched it, but I do know it's a community property state. Your ownership in that entity, if you're married, is a community asset. That means your spouse has an undivided 1/2 interest right to that asset. So in a divorce, that corporate stock or that LLC membership interest can be an asset that is subject to dispute. What we typically do in a case where one of the business owners is married, we have what's called a spousal consent. In the operating agreement or buy-sell agreement, it's going to say, if one of us gets divorced, the corporation will pay off this exiting spouse for whatever interest we either settle with them or the judge tells us they deserve. And we can do it pursuant to this promissory note that's on the back of this document. And the spouse signs a spousal consent at the inception of the business that says, yeah, that's fine with me. That way, your business interest is not subject to a family law dispute. I consulted on a case like this last year where they needed someone with corporate expertise to talk about the stock that husband owned in this restaurant business that he started. And, wife wanted stock, and we figured it all out and allowed it to be settled, but it can be a real issue. If one of you dies, God forbid, I mean, anything can happen, a meteor can fall on you. That document says the company will pay off the heirs for their revenue that they're due, the value of that person's interest in the company. And we can do it pursuant to this promissory note that's on the back of this. And it's usually, I write them for 2 years when I do them. I mean, different lawyers have different approaches, but that gives you time to pay that out, so the company doesn't have to come up with all the cash right away. Imagine if these documents weren't in place and one of these catastrophic events occurred. It also says in there that if the co-joint venturer, we never say partner because that denotes general partnership liability, which is not good. I guess I can stop sharing because I'm just talking now. You don't have to keep looking at that document. If somebody says, well, I just want out for whatever reason, they're going to go join a monastery or whatever, what happens to that person? Can they just, come knocking on my door and, here, Deborah, I'm going to sell you my stock in this MSO? No. And you don't like me, I mean, why wouldn't you like me? But I'm just saying, it could be anybody. It gives you control over where that stock goes. So if one person wants to exit the business, if they have a bona fide offer in writing from someone who's ready, willing, and able to buy their interest in the company can match that amount or pay fair market value, whichever is less, and buy the exiting owner out instead of having some random person come in. But you can never force each other to buy each other out. And you can't force someone out. Now, I have written in these documents where the parties are, let's say both or all three or however many are working in the business like you all would be, and their labor that they put into it is important to keep the business running. And we can write them also that if you quit your job working for this company or get fired for cause, and we illustrate, what cause is, like you committed a crime or you embezzled. Oh, I have a client right now who one of their employees just embezzled 30,000 because she was running the payroll and just overpaid herself and used the company credit card to buy Gucci stuff. But I digress. This can state that if you leave and don't work there anymore, we can buy you out. So if you're both working in the business and one of you does the lottery, go to Fiji thing, you buy them out. And you can either do it, there's fair market value formulations. You can get a valuation. I've got a guy who does great valuations relatively inexpensively. If you ever need that, ask Amanda or Sadie or Brittany, and I'll send you that guy's name. So that's the ABCs of the entity. Does anybody have any questions about that? I think I told you everything that I wanted to convey to you all. You can raise your hand, put it in the chat. Is somebody texting me? Are one of you guys texting me? Let me get my phone. No, not one of you guys. Okay, let's see. Questions. Great information. Yay. Okay. Well, I hope it was helpful because I know this is like alphabet soup, S Corp, C Corp, LLC, who knows what all this stuff is. Should the MSO, yeah. Deshetta, this is a really good question. And I'm old school. I prefer corporations because they're less expensive to start up. And why are they less expensive to start up? Because that $800 to the franchise tax board, with an LLC, you have to pay it in the first 75 days. With a corporation, you get your first calendar year free. So if I set it up now, I don't have to pay till 2023. If I set it up, if I'm going to set it up, if I'm not going to start my business till next year, let's say it's November. And I would advise, if a client came to me and says, I want to set up an entity and it's November, I would advise them to wait until December 17th to establish that entity. And then they will get 2023 free as well. And they won't have to pay their first $800 to 2024. Now, in the grand scheme of things, you're going to generate a lot of revenue in this business. $800 isn't going to mean that much to you down the road. But when you're starting out, $800 might mean something to you. It meant something to me when I was starting out. So that's one of the reasons I like corporations better. LLCs really were designed to fill a gap between limited partnerships and S corporations. In the old days, for real estate deals, making movies, making records, anything where people poured money into a project and then they weren't going to sell a product or service while running it, but they were going to sell the thing they created, like the movie or the real estate development, and made their money from the sale on the capital gain. Those limited partnerships were the entity that was used, but the general partnership was a person who had personal liability for what was going on. So the general partner would then set up a corporation as the general partner, and then you'd have this limited partnership. So now you've got two entities, you're paying $800 a year twice, and it's complex. So the LLC was really created to be that flow-through entity with the liability protection that could be taxed as a partnership and not a corporation, because the corporate capital gain tax is really high. I know I'm getting like way out there on this, but I'm trying to tell you like why, so that you kind of understand like why I'm saying what I'm saying. Because people think that, oh, everything's an LLC, and people don't even understand the difference between a corporation or an LLC. Eventually, you're going to take an S election anyway. It's a more structured entity. So, I mean, more than likely, you're going to take an S election because remember, I talked about the 2 buckets and less tax in this bucket. You're going to have to take the S election to do that. So that's so is the med spa the same as the MSO? Okay, are you have you Daishetta, have you started yet?
No.
Okay, good. Okay, good. Good. This is good that you're asking these questions. So how it works is, and you'll see this in the, I mean, if you like, you're going to get a bunch of documents and I created them all, my works of art, and you're going to look at them and go, oh my gosh, I can't even read these. But we'll also send you a flow chart that talks about how the revenue flows. And when you look at everything together, it's going to start making sense. So the med spa, and you're in California, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. So the med spa has to be a medical practice. Are you an RN or are you a layperson?
RN.
Okay, so you understand that there has to be a medical practice to deliver medical services. In this case, that medical practice is National Medical Directors, Inc. We are the practice, right? Dr. Staley is the doctor.
Okay.
But see, we don't want to be like Dr. Staley has his practice over here. He doesn't want to be like running 800 med spas. You want to run a med spa. So you're going to set up an entity, which will be an MSO. MSO stands for Management Services Organization. If you didn't know, they're very common throughout the whole medical industry. Big hospitals have MSOs, the big management companies, you know, you've probably had experience with these. You're going to own your MSO. And are you doing this by yourself, Daishetta?
Yes.
Okay, so you're going to own the MSO and you're going to set up your, if you were my client, I would say S corporation. Okay. You're gonna, and you could file your articles online. I mean, you could try it. I can't help you because I represent NMD Inc. and it's like a conflict of interest, but I do have another lawyer that we can refer you to if you want help doing this.
Okay. I've already set up the S corp or the corporation or the article of corporation.
You did. Oh, good. Oh, good. Yeah. Good for you. Okay, good.
But I have the S corp and the LLC though, because I thought the med spa had to be different than that.
It does, but you don't get to be both. See, the doctor has to be one of those.
Okay.
So what I would do if I were you is dissolve one of them.
Okay. And the LLC, usually.
If you were my client,
okay.
I'm not giving specific legal advice here, but you know what I'm saying? So, right. Oh, I'm so glad you were here. This is perfect for you because you're right at that point where you need to understand all this stuff.
Okay.
And did you do it yourself?
I did.
You did. Good job.
That was so hard.
I know. Now you know why you pay for it, right?
Right.
So all those things you have to do. So you're going to get a recording of this. And I know I talked really fast because I had a lot of information to deliver, but go back through it and go through those steps because those are the steps that are going to get you there. And then our company, National Medical Directors, Inc. is the practice.
Okay.
And what's going to happen is you're going to, and also what's the name of your S Corp?
I Desire Aesthetics.
Is that going to be the name of the practice?
Yeah, that's what I did put the name down as.
Okay,
yes.
so you can change there's a go in the forms there and there's a certificate of amendment name change only.
Okay.
And you should change the name to anything else. Doesn't matter because that's never going to be marketed. Because if I Desire Aesthetics is the name that we're going to use for the practice, that's going to be a DBA of National Medical Directors, Inc.
Okay.
I can see the lights coming on. I can see it in your face. So your MSO is just a management company. It's just providing a service, right, to this practice. The practice, we're going to have, the practice will employ you as an RN. The practice will purchase all the meds, all the supplies. The patient will have a separate bank account that is identified by I Desire. Is that it? I Desire Aesthetics. I love that. It's really pretty. I Desire Aesthetics.
Okay.
And that will be the practice bank account. All the patient fees are going to go into that practice bank account, right? And because by law, for medical services, patients have to pay a practice. But you're going to have online access to the account, and you're going to get you're going to get a management services agreement. Did we lose her? Are you still here, Deshetta?
Oh no, where'd she go?
Oh, you're there. You're back. I thought you went away for a minute. Can you hear me? Uh-oh, I think her,
It's probably just reconnecting.
Oh, I'm back. I'm back.
are you back? Okay, good. Okay. So yeah, I stopped because this is for you. And I'm sure other people are getting something out of this as well, but this is really for you. So there's going to be that practice account. You're going to have your own account for your MSO. You're going to have access online to that practice account. That practice account is going to pay you a W-2 as a nurse. It's going to buy all the meds. It's going to buy the supplies. It's going to pay the malpractice insurance. It's going to pay all the bills of the practice, the medical related bills. If you buy lasers, whatever. Then how do you get money to you? There's a management services agreement that says my S Corp, MSO, whatever it's called, Deshetta's practice management, let's just say, make up a name, is going to get paid X amount of dollars for managing this business for the practice. You're also, do you have your space yet? Your clinic space?
Yes.
You do. And who's on the lease?
Just myself.
So
it's a sublease, really.
Say it again.
It's like a sublease in a hair salon.
Yeah, that's risky for a bunch of reasons, but it's doable. It's doable. Okay. So what you need to do, what we're going to need you to do is to have that sublease in the name of your S Corp. You're going to get a new name for your S Corp, and then you're going to transfer that sublease into the S Corp name. Really important. And then we're going to have a sublease from your S Corp to the practice that the landlord never has to know about. But this just gives the practice the legal right to be in that space in case the med board ever comes around. And that's also another way that revenue goes from the practice to you, because the practice is going to pay you a sublease amount. And then there's a third way that money goes to you. So your beautiful name, I Desire Aesthetics, right? The practice is going to be using that name, but we want you to own that name. So we're going to have a licensing agreement that says Deshetta Medical Practice Management licenses that name, I Desire Aesthetics, to National Medical Directors Inc. for X number of dollars a month. So there's 3 ways that money flows from the practice to you. What we want, and in all these, for everybody else who's listening, I know there's a couple other clients on there, for all these MSO med spa setups, everybody knows that after the bills are paid, the revenue flows to the MSO. We want it, you want it. We want you to make money. And this is how we set it up. You do that because we're juggling compliance and revenue, right? So we're also, Deshetta, there's some webinars that I've done in the past on compliance that once you are signed up, you'll get recordings of those webinars. And Brittany and Sadie, whoever you're working with, will send you the last 2. You guys, the one we did in December or whatever it was, the end of the year, and then the short one we did recently about marketing. Oh, I'm so glad I've answered so many questions. I know it's complicated, right? I mean, this is like
Uh-huh.
all I do. You can tell I eat, breathe, and sleep this. And even, I know that sometimes even Brittany and Sadie get a little like, I'm not quite sure what this is. So I'm sure they're learning a lot too. And they know it pretty darn well, but it's not what they do all the time. So anyway, does that make sense to you?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
and you're going to get a bunch of other things. You're going to get a flow chart that illustrates how the money flows, who pays what.
Okay.
Okay, and you're going to get these documents that I just described that show how money flows from the practice to you. And now you know
Okay.
how to pay yourself. But I highly recommend everybody have a CPA they're working with. And if you don't have, and it's an unusual kind of setup. So a lot of CPAs don't really get it, but
Okay.
there's a guy, Bill McKee. You can look him up online. He's really good. He understands this.
Got Bill McKee. You said got Bill McKee?
Bill McKee, MCKE.
Okay.
And they do bookkeeping, payroll, and taxes all under one roof. And I send them tons of people because, I trust them and they understand this. Otherwise, we're trying to explain it to somebody like, well, how come the money in the practice and how does that work and all that kind of stuff. And they don't really get it because it's complex. Okay, anybody else? Is it, Deshetta, even you, do you have any more questions? Okay, go ahead. You're frozen. Your internet's slow this tonight or something. So also, if you guys have other questions, send them to Brittany and Sadie because you guys shouldn't contact me directly, but send them to Brittany and Sadie and they can send them to me. And if I can answer them, I can, because I have conflict of interest issues, because National Medical Directors Inc. and NMDMS are my clients. So I can't give specific legal advice. This is why this is general and it's not creating an attorney-client relationship with anybody here. I forgot to say that in the beginning. And there's no confidentiality here because I'm not your lawyer, okay? But I'm giving general corporate information that you could get, you could find it online if you needed to. There's Brittany and Sadie's email addresses. So anything else? Okay, I'm going to give you my wolf trivia now. So everybody who knows me knows that I'm a wildlife advocate, and I always give a little wolf trivia when I do my webinars. And the wolf trivia for today is that it is breeding season for wolves in the Northern Hemisphere. Right now, about mid-February is when they start breeding. And the reason they do that, we like to say, oh, it's Valentine's Day, it's romantic. But no, that's not the reason. They're really not, they don't think like us. But the reason they do that is because instinctively they know that they want to have their babies born when it's warm out and growing up when it's warm in the summer and it's safe and there's abundance of food, so that when the next winter comes, the babies will be almost yearlings and they can be with the pack and help the pack hunt and be an active member of the pack. So that's my wolf trivia for tonight. I am going to end the recording. Thank you everybody for being here. And like I said, if you have any other information or have other questions, guys, send it to Brittany and Sadie and I'll see you next time.